Okay, we're live. Ashima Harkafune, welcome to this week's Olla'S Education Department Live. My name is Safs Muhammad. I'm joined by two lovely ladies, Tayamari Little and Antu Yakub, who are currently two students in our Upon Oromo Adult Level 1. So I'd like to thank you two for joining me today.
It's a
Thank
pleasure to
you.
be here. Thank you for having us.
So before we get into our discussion, Tay and Antu, if you guys would like to introduce yourselves, tell us little bit about yourself, maybe your background. We can start with Antu.
Sure. Hello, everyone. Akam. My name is Antu Yakub. I am an actor. I'm a screenwriter, playwright, producer. So I'm an artist in that way, storytelling artist. And I also teach. So that's what I do.
Thank you. Tay.
Hi, everybody. My name is Taylor Amari Little, Tay, if you're seeking to refer to me on a first name basis. I use she, her, and he, him pronouns. And I am also the daughter of Sharisa Greenwood and the Littles. My people are African American by way of Detroit, Michigan, Wadesboro, North Carolina, Lynette, Alabama, and other locations throughout the South of present day United States. And our people are primarily Soninke, Akan, Fulbe, or also known as the Fulani, Wolof, and Oromo from Hararge region. And I am a conjure woman with a criminology background, which means I work with, so being a conjure woman essentially just means I work with spirits and other creatures for a living, especially based on the religion of Hoodoo, which is the first traditional, distinctly African American religion. And through my company, Unveiled Divine Technologies, through a variety of means, from services to specialized products, I help people reconnect the parts of their lineages that were lost or kicked out or hidden by colonialism, slavery, and anti-Blackness.
Awesome. Thank you. So you two being two current students in our Fun Oromo class, how did you find out about the class? Start with Antu.
Well, I found out about this class after I had taken the level 2 class last round, and I found out about that class on Instagram. It was just I think a friend of mine had shared a post or something like that, or had liked a post, and that's how I found out about Ola. And at that time, they weren't offering the level 1 course, which I probably needed first, but I took what was offered because I know I needed it and I wanted it. And it was a good experience. And so when this opened up for level 1, I also signed up.
Awesome. And Tay, how did you find out about this Ola class?
Yeah, it's so funny because I found out the same way, like through Instagram. And when I had told, Barcisa had asked me the same thing one time. And when I said that, he started laughing. I was like, I don't know, it was a really good, accessible way to talk about the class. And so once I saw it, it came about at such like the perfect time,
Mhm.
um, because it was a whole bunch of other stuff that was also just coming up around like my Oromo heritage and stuff like that. I was like, oh well, now it's time to learn the language again, like in a more formal setting, like that type of thing. And so it was just perfect. It synced up really well.
That's awesome. I guess social media is really the key. Huh?
I know, keep at it.
Well, thanks for that. Okay, so let's start. Let's get into both of your experiences learning upon Oromo. So we'll start with Tay now. I guess when did you start learning upon Oromo and kind of how? If you would like to tell me your
Mm.
experience with upon Oromo.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I had started intentionally learning it like the fall of 2020 probably. I would say it was probably fall of 2020. And I got into it. I started studying Afan Oromo because I try to make it a point to learn all of my ancestral languages just because it's so much more helpful to just like, again, we talk about like how languages help us understand the culture and reflect the people, like the ideologies that like that are within like the culture, stuff like that, like they reflect so much, and they're also like gateways in a lot of ways. And so it just, to me, the best thing that makes sense is to just learn those languages. And even start to like pray in those languages, to just integrate them into our lives in a really like profound and powerful manner, and just to like keep them alive. And so, yeah, I don't know. I think that I'm really grateful for the class, like the formal class, because it helps me prioritize it a bit more. Because I have a lot of lineages, I got a lot of stuff, like a lot of backgrounds and stuff like that. And so, but it's always nice to have like dedicated time to like focus on even one or two at a time.
Okay. So kind of, I guess then my next question would be, why did you start learning?
Why? Well, that's a whole thing, because let me think. Let me think about how I want to answer. I actually almost ended up going to to like Oromia.
Oh, really?
And I did it. And so once that was like kind of starting to be in the works, I was like, oh well, now I gotta learn language like extra quickly. Like now I have to do that. Let me hurry up and do that, because I don't want to be over there looking wild, like that was the thing. But it ended up not happening. For some reasons that maybe I'll talk about a little bit later. But yeah, it was like I think that was like why I started doing it at the time that I did. Let me see. I forget. I feel like there's another part I was gonna say to that question, but I don't remember. Did you just ask like why?
Yeah, why yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. And because I was about to go, and like I said, I try to learn all my ancestral languages, so it's gonna be time at some point.
That's great. And Antu, when did you start learning Afan Oromo, and kind of how did you start? If you want to go over your experience with that.
Sure. For me, excuse me, it's a little bit different. Afan Oromo is actually my first language. I was born in Deredoa, and my family immigrated to the U.S. When I was very young. I was 5 years old. And when I came to the U.S., I had the knowledge of several languages. Like I could speak Afan Oromo fluently. I could speak Somali fluently. I could also speak Arabic. And that's really because in that area where we went from Deredoa to Djibouti, and there was just a lot of people speaking different languages, and you just pick it up. It's something, that's really beautiful about about that area, and also like, other parts of Africa as well. But I was having a difficult time learning English. And, I was really trying to acclimate myself in the culture. It was like such a stark contrast from where I had been and what I had known. And I had some really bad advice from my first grade teacher who, this is in the 80s. And I just I don't know if it was intentional. It was probably inherited, by her. But it was, I don't know if it was intentionally malicious, but it was bad advice. That, she said that if I really wanted to get good at English, and I wanted to understand what's going on, that I should just stop speaking all other languages. Like I should speak English all the time. And I know now, like reflecting back, like that is, that's an aftershock or after effect or perpetuation, of colonialism, obviously, and it was, but at the time, as a child, in the first grade, I'm like, I need to know what's going on. Everybody here looks different than me. Nobody's talking to me. I don't know what is this world. So, and so I took that advice. I didn't have the judgment at the time to kind of say, okay, I can do that at school, but not at home. I basically was like, I'm going to learn this language. I'm going to get really good at it. And I'm not speaking any other language anymore. And I stopped speaking Afan Oromo. And like it infuriated my mother, because she would try to speak to me at home and I would just ignore her. And it was just really just really bad. I'm laughing at it now, but I mean, it's bad.
Yeah.
And so what happened was I got very good at English, like to the point where I was in like AP English classes for like all of my school career. I became like a really good writer. I spoke well. I was not spoken, but I articulated myself well through the written and spoken English language. But I stopped speaking my language, and it got to the point where at some point, I couldn't understand what people were saying when they were speaking Afan Oromo around me. And for a long time, I didn't. It's maybe a little embarrassing to say, but for a long time, I didn't care about it because I was so concerned about fitting in all the time. And I was just really concerned. My focus was about like making sense of the world I was living in and doing my best not to stand out. So it felt like the more I could assimilate, the more I could, hide my differences, the more successful I was at achieving this goal of fitting in. And, at home, my mother was always very traditional with her rules and, things like that. But I kind of like lived this double life. And the bridge for me was just like, okay, I would get around people and they say, "Oh, you're very Americanized." And I felt like at a certain time that felt like a compliment, because I had achieved the like, okay. But even so, when I did get around quote unquote American people, there was always a difference, and there's just having so many like identity issues and, things like that. And getting to the point where it did start to weigh on me over some time that I wasn't fluent in my language. And I was hearing another language a lot. I was hearing Amharic a lot, in our house. So I actually started understanding it because it was spoken a lot more at that time than it was than Afan Oromo was. But I didn't actively start pursuing like relearning, and I call it relearning my language, really. When until I made this active choice where I made this promise to myself that like I want to say that I'm decolonized, and that's a heavy thing to say because you never know if you really will, because it's such a part of all of our existences at this point, and I feel like, yeah, the American culture is what I was raised in, and it is a part of me. I mean, I'm not anti like American culture. It is a part of me. But I'm also, I can no longer hide those parts of me that I don't know. You know what I mean? That I'm not familiar with. And there's always this feeling of like this vagueness or this blurriness about me that I don't understand, and I know it's kind of like triggered or it's irritated a little bit when I get around family or, friends who speak Afan Oromo. And I used to feel this wall inside of me come up when I couldn't speak. And I would just be like, okay, that's them. I'm just going to go in my little bubble. And I would just hide behind the wall. But since I, started taking this class, and even actually before, because when I made this promise to myself that I was going to do this, I started working with my stepfather, and we started having like, online sessions where he would give me some lessons, and that was helpful in getting me, moving. But like, the thing is, I needed to be accountable in a way where there were other students that were also like working, and there's just a little bit more. I felt like I needed to learn with a group of people. Kind of like where I felt like it would just hold me a little more accountable in a way. So where was I? Yeah, so that was about I want to say that I was in 2020 as well.
Twins.
Yeah.
When you made that decision.
Yeah, it was about somewhere around there. I mean, and now since I've been working with, with my dad, and I've been working with the courses with Barcisa as well, and the groups, I feel like the difference when I've gone to visit family, that wall is not thick. I've like felt like, okay, I've stepped through this space where I'm trying and I don't feel as lost,
Mm-hmm.
in myself, or I don't feel as isolated, and I'm trying. And that feels, it feels really good to be able to understand what's being said around you in your own language.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That
So
is
I'm
so
very grateful.
powerful.
That is very powerful. Yeah.
If I
Yeah, I'm
could
grateful.
add, like, that really, everything that you said really resonated, like, especially with that description of there being like, you kind of almost creating like your own bubble as a result of feeling like, well, I can't really relate to them in this way right now because I don't have maybe like this vocabulary or I'm out of practice, like that type of thing. Like just the descriptions, the imagery that you were giving, it stood out to me. It really resonated. And it reminded me, it started bringing up some things for me too, of just like, this isn't the same thing, but it started just reminding me of like, mm, kind of getting, I feel like I was at a place where I was just kind of used to not really like I was a little bit too comfortable with like not hearing my Otomo ancestors. um because with working with spirits on the day to day, like it's a very integrated experience. And so mm, people are talking all the time, spirits are talking all the time, but like, and it's supposed to be like a communal experience. Like even if it's just me in the physical world and then like, they're like around or something like that. But like there'll be times where I'm in the kitchen and like I'll start hearing some words, like, and then I'll know that they're either speaking Amharic or Oromo or sometimes like Somali. And then I'll have to do like Google Translate because I'm like, oh, I'm like just overhearing conversations while I'm in the kitchen. And I'm like, what are y'all talking about? Things like that. But it's like ideally I should also be able to just, I shouldn't have to go to Google Translate, like, ideally. And I agree with Antu about like the level of accountability that the class provides, because there's like a certain level of rigor that it brings up for us. And like with the assignments, but with the different level, or not different levels, but different range of like activities, the different topics that we cover, like there's like a certain level of pressure. And it's like sometimes it's like anxiety inducing, but like usually it's like really good.
I would hope
Yeah.
so.
It's really good. Yeah, it's effective.
Yeah, something you made me think of something that's stood out to me as a memory from the class. And this
Mhm.
it was like 2 weeks ago when Barcisa asked, "Do you guys want a break from homework, or do you all want homework?" And everybody was like, homework, please." And that just speaks to like the desire that we all have to do this. And
Yeah.
it is testing. There is a challenge because there's different levels, and there's certainly people in the class who are fluent in speaking the language, or like better at speaking it than I am. But I feel like it's a good challenge because no one actually, makes you feel bad. I mean,
Yeah.
Barcisa Samuel has been so patient with me from the beginning, and he's just patient with everybody. He just is very, very inclusive, and really, really makes everyone feel comfortable. It's very encouraging. So even when you do start to feel like, oh, I don't know what's being said, like, or what's going on, or what are you asking me? You can just say that, and
Yeah.
everybody's really supportive. But the challenge is good, and I do enjoy the homework, because I think that is where you're tested, your
Mhm.
ability to kind of like piece the meanings of the words together and formulate the sentences and everything.
Yes, yeah, I love. Can we just take a minute and acknowledge how great Barcisisa is? Because
Yeah, he is the best.
Especially
Rashida
in,
Samuel is the best.
yeah.
I'm like, oh my
100%.
god,
Yes.
I love
Okay, so good.
him.
Okay, let's move on to our next question. So well, thank you for sharing your experiences. I feel like a lot of people can relate to that, where you're too foreign for home, but you're too
Mm,
foreign for where you live right now. It's kind of like the core problem of like being a diaspora. But I guess my next question would be, so Auntie, you kind of spoke about, how your family contributed, but, that teacher sort of, influenced you to stop learning. But I guess, Tay,
mm,
I guess we'd be interested to find out, how did you come to know of your Oromo ancestry, and kind of, I guess you mentioned it a little bit, but what motivation that brings for you to learn the language, and kind of how that encourages you, maybe.
Yeah. So I found out. So I found out about the Ottawa ancestry in sometime in 2019. And I had found out. So let me think about how I want to tell the story too. So there's a colleague that I have. So anybody who's really close to me, they also are spiritualists. So they also work with their spirits on the day to day too. That's just how our networks run. And um and so I was with them at their house one day. And usually when we get together, me and anybody who like our spirits work together and we work together, usually when those things happen, like more intense things happen because our spirits be like, they be scheming and they're like, ooh, our two descendants are together. Let's like find the most powerful things to, like bring up, since it'll be easier for them to have like support to process it. But so one day I was at their house and I don't know what we were doing. I forgot. And I had like went to the bathroom for a moment, and then when I was done, I was looking in the mirror. All of a sudden I didn't see my face. I saw someone else's face and I was really confused because that's something that personally never happens to me. So like I know for other spiritualists, like sometimes everybody has different experiences. We all have different ways that like we all have different ways of perceiving. We all have different things that are unique to our lineages. And for me, like a lot of changes to my physical site isn't like super common when it comes to like how I interact with spirits. And so when I saw this face, it was a face that I recognized. I was just confused as to why I was seeing it in my mirror, like in this mirror. I started just to like feel really curious, and I asked some questions about it, like very briefly. And all of a sudden I just started hearing well, one, that me and the person were cousins, but then also that we're connected through Oromo and Fube heritage. And they gave like a reason for why they were showing up in that moment too, and it was actually like somewhat related to time. But anyway, after that moment had happened, I went back to my friend and I told them what happened. And so we do something called divination. And so if you don't know what divination means, that's essentially just where you are initiating conversation with spirits in like a kind of a formal manner, where you're seeking to get like specific knowledge, essentially, or insight to an issue, insight to a topic. And so we decided to divine on it with our spirits and just check what was going on and confirm and stuff like that, what was going on. And yeah, then it ended up that I had Ottawa ancestry, because I was like, what? I was like, I don't know. I never thought about it, and I already knew before then about all my other lineages. So it was like, wow, adding another one, and then once after that had happened, I kind of like left it alone for a while. Like I honestly didn't even tell the person who I had saw in my face, like probably till I don't think I told them till way later. Like months after that had happened. Let me see. And then like it was kind of a lot of back-to-back incidents. So that was like the very beginning, and I think and then there was a moment where like other Oromo related stuff. So it wouldn't really be like my ancestors who would be showing it wouldn't always be my ancestors, but also then like during divinations where I would be going to someone for assistance that was, in my opinion, totally related to other topics. Then Waka started being brought up. And like they would like, it would be like diviners who had no idea who Wak was, but suddenly were like speaking and like talking about Wak and talking about like he wants to like help you in these very particular ways, and you need to be like working with him in this way, you need to be praying with him in this way, like things like that. And these things where it was always in a combination of Oromo ancestors showing up, or like reminders of you need to work with your Oromo ancestors, like that type of thing showing up throughout the years, and also Wak and Ayana. And so it was like a variety of these moments, because I just kept doing this thing where I would be like, like I would just like I was just really, really delayed. And I had my reasons for it, but I was like really delayed in like just like working with those particular lineages, even though for my other lineages, I was really quick to like accept it. Yeah, but also they just felt different energetically, and that's like kind of why. Like they just felt, it was like something about it that felt different. Like not just the you're all the way in East Africa, my other ones are like more so in like Western Africa. It wasn't just that thing, but they just felt there was a certain thing that I had to be able to articulate at some point, which I got assistance with later on. But anyway, so yeah, there was like a variety of circumstances and back-to-back things between like when I first found out, even leading up to like early or late last year, that really just brought things together. You know, certain Otomo ancestors like showing up also like one by one, and you know, just talking a little bit about like themselves and stuff like that. And what else was I gonna say? And also like some like Somali spirits and things like that. So it's just been a really interesting ride. And I just, you know, now I just accept everything that they pass on.
Great. And Antu, kind of just, you know, passing that question on to you, kind of, you know, what role has your family had in, you know, your experience of learning upon Otomo? I know you kind of spoke about it briefly, but maybe you could tell us about maybe their role now. Are they more involved? Are you able to ask more questions and get more help? That sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, my family has always been available in terms of helping me. It was just me taking the step and saying, I'm ready to do this now, you know? So yeah, I mean, sometimes when I'm doing the homework assignments and I'm completely lost, I'll call my parents and I'll ask them like, okay, I need your help with this section.
Yeah.
But it was really rewarding. Like one of the last homework assignments that I did, I only had to call my mother for like one section. I think I answered like the first 7 sections by myself. And I was like, oh, I only have to call you for this one section. So that's progress. Yeah. And, you know, it's interesting. I have a couple of like life coaches / spiritual leaders who I, you know, sometimes reach out to. And one of them, Tay, you reminded me of this when you were speaking earlier. One of the readings I had gotten with one of the life coaches that I work with was that I need to pray in my, you know, mother tongue. And that's something I've gotten probably the last 2-3 years. I do like, we'll do a reading with him like once a year. And so that was something too that also drove me. Like I can't right now pray in Afan Oromo, but that's a goal of mine.
Yeah.
You know, I'd like to be able to have a long conversation with my mother. I'd like to be able to have, you know, my grandfather's still alive back home, and I'd like to be able to, you know, have a long conversation with him beyond, you know, I come for ya nagaya, you know. So these are personal goals that for me are like, they are achieving them. It's like worth everything to me. It's, you know, the worth and the value of that is, you know, beyond anything that, you know, we can physically possess in this world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, language truly is a barrier between, you know, different people and you with your family back home, and even with your own family that's still here. I feel like it creates a deeper connection than the one you currently have now. Yeah. So now we're going to move on to talk about the class. So you guys are both taking our adult level currently. So I guess I know we spoke about how much we love our Bursisa, but what have you guys learned so far from the class, and maybe what are you enjoying most about it? If you could tell us a little bit about that, we can start with Tay.
Sure. Let me see. I feel like What have I learned so far? I don't know. We covered a lot of different topics, but I feel like my experience with the class, I feel like I entered the class in a very like focused mindset where I was just like concentrated on, okay, now it's time for me to like start, or like start dedicating my studies to this in like a very particular way. Like it was very like narrow kind of. But then once I got there, I realized, oh, I didn't process that there was like an extreme like social aspect to it, like that there's connection. Like there's also this emphasis on like people and like specifically like similar to what Antu was saying, where we need to be in a group. Like I feel like when I first signed up, I was so focused on like, okay, this is what I need to learn, this is what I need to be able to do, these types of things. But there's this other element to it where I'm just really grateful for that connection that showed up, that I just didn't anticipate, that type of like familiarity. Like you start to know who might answer this question, who's going to raise their hand. Like, we recognizing the names that are showing up. Like there's this, we're a cohort, and I guess I didn't really anticipate that, but I really actually value it. I think also in terms of like some of the things we've learned, like that have been really interesting to me and great for me, is like the Oromo connections to time and also terminologies for the different sectors of time, which is like we talked about in our more recent weeks. That's been really helpful. And especially because even like similar to what I was saying before around like how when I saw the other face in the mirror, the Oromo cousin, that like it was also related to time. And so just like it's like being able to get those terminologies and get certain like learn about certain connections to time, like cultural connections to it, it helps for my spirits to teach me some more about like, well, what were they trying to say? So like it gives more context of what they were trying to say like a couple years ago, things like that. Like now it's time to actually sit with it. And I know even when we were talking about like the Oromo calendar, the Borana calendar, my spirits love that. When y'all started talking about that, they loved like they were really trying to push for like a deeper dive into me working with that calendar. And it was, I remember when they first started talking about it during the class, that there was like some really intense feelings in my body. And it's the type of feeling that they give when they want to take like a deeper seat into my body or guide in a more firm way. And they had did that like as soon as it came up, and I had started wondering like really gently, like, should I look some more into it? And which was interesting because prior, like I know that calendar, I already knew that calendar existed before. And I knew about like, some other calendars that existed prior. And like, I think in my circles, we do talk a lot about, there's so many times going on at once, so many different calendars, and like the importance of going back to ancestral calendars. But I had never really felt called to actually, I watched by feeling. So I didn't feel called until I had that gentle curiosity this time. And then they had finally gave that feeling like, yes, okay, please just go for it now. Just please, like, hurry up, that type of thing. And yeah, like even learning the names for each of the days, I've had so much fun with that. I don't know why, I just really love that. I think there's just certain information that we're getting that I didn't really anticipate getting for some reason, or maybe in the ways that we got it. But I've just been really grateful to like be present for it, and also just like connect some dots. So like I've been talking about this so much recently, but so I have something that the West refers to as like synesthesia, and how that manifests for me is that when I read, I like read in color, and that's something that I thought everybody had like until like, I don't know, early college or something. But essentially, like for me, any type of word that I like hear or I'm reading, physically or what have you, like there's a color for each letter, there's a color for all the words, there's like a pattern and all those things. And so I really like learning the names of each of the days in Afan Oromo, because then I got to see like some of the colors and the meanings that I already associate like with these different days, like they matched. And so it was just really beautiful to see like all these different connections, because in my lineage, we talk a lot about like color and spiritual sight and how they go together. And they help me with my homework. I'll say that too. It's really nice.
Wow. Great homework help. Probably the
Yeah.
best homework help. But thank you for that. And now, Antu, we'll go on to you if you would like to tell us about, your experience taking the final oral class, and even maybe your previous experiences and kind of, what you've learned so far and things like that.
Yeah. Well, what I've enjoyed learning about, besides obviously the learning the language, is learning about the calendar, the Burana
Mm-hmm.
calendar, as Tay
Mm-hmm.
mentioned. I really and we learned a little bit of it in the last
Yeah.
level,
Mm-hmm.
but I feel like the going over it again and like really really understanding the breakdown this time was really helpful to me. I am always curious about what indigenous spirituality we had as people, because
Mm-hmm.
that's something I was never educated or like exposed to. You know, we know now that there's a lot of Muslims and a lot of Christians and
Yeah.
some Jewish people in Ethiopia and parts of Oromia, but I really didn't know anything about what we were doing before those religions came to our land. So
Mm.
it's really eye opening, and I'm fascinated because I think there. Barcisa mentioned this, but I think there are people who do both. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because the spirituality, and some people might argue with me on this, and everyone is entitled to their own perspective and their
Speak
own.
on it.
I've come to the conclusion over years, that like spirituality is not necessarily religion and vice versa.
Mm.
Like you can have, and sometimes you can have both in one, or sometimes you have both.
Mm.
And I haven't done extensive research, but I do know, like, I've met some people who are not religious but are extremely spiritual. And I've met people who are extremely religious and not so spiritual, you
Mm.
know? So it's just, and sometimes I feel like people will use religion as a way to guide them through getting acclimated with some spirituality or connection with, um, our creator, and I'm not like saying one is bad or one is good. I don't want people getting angry with me about this because everyone has their own opinion about this. I'm just saying how I feel about it and just
Yeah.
what I've observed. And so I think I'm curious in this area, and I want to know, like, what were my ancestors doing, and
Mm.
how much of that am I carrying in my current space,
Mm-hmm.
because I think it's I think it's not helpful to believe that what your ancestors were doing is not living in you.
Mm.
I think there's truth that whatever they were doing, um, whether it was melted or kind of fused with another culture that came into the region, whatever, like, you carry that in your body.
Yeah.
You look at our body shapes and the way that we walk, and even the way that we speak, and even the way that we worship, it's all impacted by what our ancestors were doing. And I think the more we can get educated on what they were doing, the more we can understand ourselves, and also kind of like help shape um, a stronger society for our future generations. Like, because if you listen to what the history books tell you, or
Mm.
even like I'm an entertainer, and if you look at like a lot of historical dramas and things, you think that we were doing nothing until outsiders came and made us something,
Mm-hmm.
and that's actually not true. Like, that's so far from the truth.
Yeah.
So I think it kind of like, now we have this gift where information is at our fingertips. Literally, you can Google anything, or you can get information on a book that will give you information. So that's the gift of living in this time period where the information that has been either altered, by governments in the past, or altered by, people in positions of power, that information is now being, like, the veil is being lifted. People are getting information about, the history of Oromia and Oromo people, and the way that, like, growing up, I couldn't even tell people I was Oromo because people didn't even know what that was. Oftentimes because I had to get into, like, the whole background, and they're like, what is that? And I'd just be like, I'm from Ethiopia, oh, and sometimes people don't even know where that is, but most of the time, at least when I was growing up, we were coming off of, like, the news of the famine in Ethiopia, so people would be like, oh, that's where all those people were starving, so, like, it was just, thank goodness we're not there anymore. Like, now when you say Oromo, some people might actually have, read about something come up in their news, and people are just a little bit more informed because the information is available. So anyway, I kind of went on a tangent there, but I say all that to say that I really appreciate learning about, our spirituality and the way that we governed ourselves. Because we had a very, like, and I know that the Gada system course is hopefully going to be offered the next go around, and I'm going to take that too, because that's something I've been hearing about in recent years, but I really want to understand it from the ground up, and because that says a lot about democracy, the way that we basically had that. That's how we were running things, and people would think that the idea of democracy was introduced by, the Europeans, or by these Western ideals, but actually, Oromo people have been governing ourselves in a truly democratic structure for a long time before that was shut down. So I like learning about these things, because again, you hear this cliche statement, you don't know where you're going if you don't know where you've been, but it's not really cliche, because you have to know what kind of power that you're carrying with you. You have to understand what your history is, and you have to know that when you walk into the room, you're not there, like, for no reason. Like, you're there because your ancestors did what they did, and here you are today, and so, like, that whole seat at the table thing, when you're an immigrant, I'm going to say that you do, at least for myself, I struggled for a long time with, me, like, oh, I'm so grateful to be here. And yeah, I'm grateful to be here, but I also earned my spot.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? And sometimes that earning came from what my grandmother did, or what my great grandparents did, or, you know what I mean? What my mom did, obviously, but, like, it's understanding what we were doing long before the histories got manipulated. And I like that. That's also part of the class. It's not just a language class, but it's like a historical class, and you're just learning so much.
Yeah, totally.
I appreciate, I just want to say really quick too, I appreciate that, like, how much you're bringing up around, like, the value of understanding, like, the ways that we've governed ourselves pre-colonially, and just, like, letting our ancestors live through us, and also letting them educate us, and the other spirits attached to our lines and things like that. It reminded me of how, I know, like, for me, even though I was talking about in my experience, I was kind of not really intentionally engaging with, like, my Oromo heritage for a while. But even though that was, like, my case for a little bit, there's plenty of African American people who, especially who are spiritualists, who have been finding out in, like, the past few years, like, that they're heavily led by their East African spirits. And that's something that's, like, less talked about, or, like, less thought to be something that is a thing. Because when you hear about, like, African American people and they talk about, like, our origins, like, they're like, you're always like West African and Central African and like things like that, and like they don't really go anywhere else with those like positionings and stuff. But our heritages tend to be like really really mixed, and there's like just there's so many hoodoos in particular, like hoodoo practitioners in particular, who have like really strong East African ancestors showing up for them on a daily basis. And like some of the ones in my life who also have Oromo heritage, like in particular, I know that their spirits actually tend to teach them even about ways of governing that predate the Gada system that their Oromo spirits were practicing, especially their Oromo like femme identified spirits, or their Oromo spirits who are like people of marginalized genders, women, and other non-men. And so that's something that I'm always trying to like uplift as well. Even though, of course, like still finding a lot of value in the Gada system, but also understanding that there's a lot that has taken place across these past centuries, and a lot that's still buried underneath like what we currently know. And so one important thing of like just continuing to work with our ancestors in an intentional way is to let the people who were there to begin with, like, teach us, like, give us some more context to like what's actually happening, and like and what needs to like resurface, especially because they are supposed to be leading a lot of like, how our politics are, and helping us to just like resurface a lot of memory that might have just been buried over time. And so I just wanted to say that as well, especially just in my relationship like with Waka. Like there's just a lot of acknowledgement. There's always a lot of acknowledgement that I feel when in my relationship with Waka, where like it feels like he's always like irritated with the disruption that is like between him and his ways, and like his like Oromo people who are supposed to be his children, like slash the people who are supposed to be his children. Like there's always like this like sense of like, uh like like I really wish we didn't have to go through this right now, like this type of thing, like we should have been able to do this, I should have been able to communicate with so and so, like things like that. There's just so much disruption, and that comes from colonialism. And so yeah, I just want to bring that up to and affirm like what Antu was saying.
Thank you for that, both. Yeah, those are really great responses. And then kind of just the last thing we're going to talk about is just the importance of learning, whether it be an ancestral language or a Whānau itself. Why do you say it's important, or why do you think it's important for, diaspora and non-Oromos to learn a Whānau? Let's start with Antu.
So yeah, I think I may have touched on this in my last response. So I'm just going to, say that, just continue that point, that I think it's important for members of the diaspora to, to learn Afan Oromo. And even if you're, of a different diaspora, like you should learn your language, because it is very empowering. It will feel like not all was lost. We're now in a place where thankfully our societies are embracing it seems like we're trying to embrace, the diversity of cultures and identities. And so I think language, Barcisa Samuel always shares this quote, and I hope I'm not messing up the quote, so I'm just going to say I'm paraphrasing it, but that language is a boat that carries the culture. And that always sticks with me, because it's like, it's the thing that connects you. It's like the words. So like when you speak a language, you're thinking thoughts. Like you think thoughts when they come out in that language that you thought them. So as much as I speak English, I think in English, I dream in English, and I want to also be able to dream and speak and pray in the language that my parents speak, that I first learned, and that like my ancestors spoke, because that is a part of me. It's not a part of me that I can deny. It's what made this that you see, you know what I mean? And even my way of looking at the world is always slightly different than you know, somebody who's considered like, I guess, mainstream American. Slightly different because I am in interaction with my relatives. I have this experience. So I think even if you're not in interaction with relatives, and if you're somebody who's like one or two or three generations removed, it's still a part of you. It's still part of it's still why part of the reason why you're walking this earth in the body, um, in the body that you are. So why not, open up your perspective so that your brain is not controlled, entirely by, you know, um, not, I wouldn't say controlled, but like I would say, I don't know, like this is crazy. Like you have options, that you have access to the parts of you that are you.
Yes.
We're not going to deny that it's you as a member of the diaspora. This is your heritage, so I'm not saying like deny the culture in which that you're currently living in and that you're currently existing through, but also there's no denial that it's a part of you. So why not give yourself, all the tools that you can have to be a really well-rounded um, person that will open up, pathways to the things, that are in you that you don't know, you know. It's just more options, I guess.
Totally. I love that
That was a
response.
word. That was so good.
You could tell us a little bit about maybe why you think it's important to learn upon Oromo or even ancestral languages for diaspora and even non-Oromos.
Yeah, I mean, oh my God, you took the words out of my mouth. Like, again, just talking about like memory being in the body, and like it really doesn't matter how far you come from the land, honestly, like how far away you've been, like how long you've been away from the land. Like, again, what you said, like there's just no denial that it's you. The way I phrase things sometimes, like again, like being here based in the States, like for Hoodoos or for Black Americans, it's like there's no denial. It's like you could look at somebody and be like, "That's a Congo baby," because ain't no way, like that's a Congo baby just displaced on this land. Like, but up and down, like it shows. And so I totally agree that like just these languages, they carry so much, and they give us access to they give us access to our ancestors, to our cultures, and to them being able to continue themselves on through us. um and also just knowing the history like of Afan Oromo, like it of course deserves to be treated as such a huge language, because it is a huge language. We've been hearing back to back in each class like how many people speak it, even though it's not considered like an official language like by the Ethiopian government, like that type of thing. Like, but so what I'm saying, like it deserves to be treated with the utmost respect. It should be like on more language apps, which people are trying to, put forth at this time, which is amazing, have more classes, more ways to learn it. It just doesn't make sense to further exclude it, from the people who need it. And I think to like, yeah, like to, if that exclusion for the people who need it like continues to happen, then that's a violence against us. We have every right to learn this so that we can just hear better and we can perceive better and we can be within ourselves better.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you both so much. Kind of just to wrap up this discussion, I guess I'll just talk a little bit about the plan for our education department. So like Antu mentioned briefly, we are planning to have a Gada class tentatively set for April of this year. So like they said, learning about, Indigenous ways of governance obviously is very important. So if you're interested, keep your eyes out for that registration. And then there also will be an Afan Oromo Kids class that will run after the Gada class. So if you have any siblings or, young children, nieces, nephews that you'd like, for them to learn Afan Oromo, we will be having that class. But other than that, I'd like to thank you two today for joining this discussion. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I'm sure the audience did as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Sartu. I don't want to go without saying that I know we said how amazing Barcisa Samuel is, but I also have to say, like, you, Sartu, and Gudisa, and Firatol, and Yosef, you guys are really, really wonderful at supporting the class, and you do an excellent job of helping make the class such an enjoyable experience. And you guys are just really great helpers. You're doing an excellent job.
Thank you.
Yeah. Strong agree.
That's it for our discussion today. Thank you for listening and staying along to the end if you did. And we will see you in the next one. Okay.
Thank you. Bye, Tommy.